This episode is as everyday life as the unlearning playground gets. I talk about money, I talk about jobs, hustling, zooming out, and more than anything, I talk about critically understanding and analyzing our own opinions about all of these things. Let's get into it. Hello, good people of the internet. Welcome to the Unlearning Playground, an everyday life podcast by Chetan Narang. Let's talk about money. And specifically, I want to talk about objective truths about money. What do I mean by that? I mean that every time I've ever had this discussion with my friends, my colleagues, and anyone else for that matter, I think unanimously each and every one of those conversations have ended at the conclusion that it's all relative. It is a subjective opinion and it totally depends on you, however you want to see how important money is in your life. And I think that is the right answer. It of course depends on you. Any sane adult would agree with you that it depends on your own situation, and that's pretty much it. But I believe that is also a comfortable answer. And usually comfortable answers do not involve intricacies that we might be better off checking out. So today I'm going to spend some time just discussing some objective truths about money, and maybe it helps to improve upon the subjective opinions we have about money. And I believe that is one of the jobs of really being an adult in the room. You can of course say that this is a subjective situation and it totally depends on you however you want to perceive it. But then the adult in the room should also be able to guide you that these are the few facts that you might be missing out on before forming your own opinion. I believe that is important, and let's do that today. And specifically, I'm talking about this today because, see, it is the beginning of May 2022 right now, and especially in India, this is the time when a lot of people are actually thinking about money. It is the tax season, it is also the appraisal season, and everyone is thinking about money all over the place. Maybe you're thinking about your salary, maybe you're thinking about the next job you should be in, maybe you're thinking about what new avenues to dump your money into, how to save more taxes, things of that sort. So I think this is a timely episode for me to record because to put things out there when people are actually thinking about it, I think sometimes you need to meet people where they are. So let's see if I can meet some new people today. Now, whenever I'm thinking about money, whenever I'm talking about money, there is this one book which always lingers in the back of my mind, and that is Walden by Henry David Thoreau. I talked about that book even in the intro episode of this podcast, and if you haven't really read it, I think I would recommend reading it, although it is kind of a hard read. You know, it was written in the late 1800s. I think it was the late 1800s, and the English is slightly archaic, and the guy has written in pretty long form sentences. They span a few lines at times. So of course it's kind of a tough read, but anyway, the backdrop of the book is that this guy Henry David Thoreau, he decides that he's done with the city life. And mind you, this is the 1800s. The dude was done with city life in the 1800s. I cannot even imagine what he would do these days. But yeah, he was done with the city life and he decides that he's gonna go off into a far off village and start from scratch, build his own home, grow his own vegetables, and whatever else one does solo. Read more books, meditate, and maybe even write some good stuff. And he actually does that. So he takes, I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was his friend, and this guy owned a piece of land in a place called Walden Pond. So Henry actually migrates to that place and he actually does all of these things. He builds his own home, he starts to grow his own vegetables, and now he's living a sustainable life there. And in the middle of the book, after having described all that he had done to actually make it on his own, he's also describing his episodes with nearby farmers. So he's talking about how those people approach life and how they actually perceive this this problem of earning a livelihood. And I'm layering into this one quote which I really love from him, and I've shared that multiple times also in this podcast. It goes like this: the farmer is trying to solve the problem of livelihood by a formula more complicated than the problem itself. He actually talked about the fact that people in the 1800s, not just city folks, he's talking about farmers in the 1800s, had complicated their lives in the pursuit of solving the problem of livelihood. And he says that the formula that they're using to actually solve that problem is turning out to be more complicated than the original problem itself. Now, if that doesn't describe the modern human, I do not know what does. Literally, we modern humans, have complicated our lives way more than needed, and all in the pursuit of actually earning our livelihoods. Because if you actually look at it, our jobs, our pursuit of making money is supposed to be limited to that. It is supposed to be for earning our bread, for earning our livelihood. But we have muddled it with so many teary eyed concepts that it has almost become a blasphemy to say that I do this job for money. People actually think that you cannot be living a fulfilled life if you're working for money. And it's not just other people. People think that about themselves. That if they're working for money, it's a bad thing. It's something that is less fulfilling than maybe being passionate about your work. Now, I'm not dissing on people who are passionate about their work. Of course not. It is actually a good situation to be in, that you're working and you're also enjoying your work and you're passionate about your work. But I think what I'm trying to say is that that is not what your work is supposed to be about. That is not what your jobs were supposed to be about, ever. Your jobs were and are supposed to be a means to an end, and that end is livelihood. It is a means to an end in the sense of what we call roti kapda makan in Hindi, or food, clothing, shelter, and a few other comforts, let's just say it like that. That is the end for which your job is a means, and that's it. Your job is not supposed to bring you happiness. Your job, your salary, your money is not supposed to get you out of all the dissatisfaction that you feel with life. It's not supposed to take you away from that sense of lack, that persistent sense of lack that we feel in the back of our minds. It's not supposed to show you the purpose of your life. Heck not. It's not supposed to be that way. But somehow we have complicated our jobs and our careers so much that we expect so many things from it now. And isn't that true? I mean, if you objectively look at it, I think it should not be up for debate that it is the purpose of no human being to be delivering groceries to people's home faster, or to deliver ads to a person's mobile phone in a better manner, or to better the e-commerce in the world. Of course, that cannot be the purpose of your life. I mean, come on. All of these are man-made things. They cannot be the divine purpose you were put into this world for. Of course not. And that should not really be up for debate. But somehow, we have so romantically sold this idea to ourselves and also to others that your jobs and the work that you do is supposed to fulfill you. It's supposed to make you feel the most driven person around. And what that does is, if you're a lucky person, and I would say that that is a few lucky people who actually reach that state within their jobs, within their businesses, or whatever it is that they do. They also work for it, of course. So it's not just luck. But if you reach that state where you actually passionately love what you're doing, good for you. It's a beautiful place to be in. I totally appreciate that. I'm not dissing on that. But if you're not in that state, we constantly, because we have sold this idea that your work is supposed to fulfill you, we're constantly looking for other avenues to actually, there is this dissatisfaction here, and we put it out there and we see that, okay, this is what might fulfill me. This is what might fulfill me. Let me just change my job. Let me start making more money. Let me try to look at that promotion. Let me see how that person is making so much more money and things of that sort. And what that does is it opens up a perpetual cycle of dissatisfaction and discontentment, which is not really because of those external circumstances where we put it in. And all of this is actually valid after a point of time. So you cannot really be under debt. You cannot really be struggling to put 3 square meals a day on your table and be thinking all of this. Of course not. That is exactly what your jobs are for. Your jobs are supposed to give you that security. Your cash flow, your money, your finances is supposed to give you that security. And after that, it cannot give you much more than that. It just cannot. And that is one thing that we really, really need to unlearn, especially in the hustle culture that we are in these days. Everyone is just racing around and, just trying to focus on being the next big thing or doing the next big thing and opening up a new business or being more successful in their own jobs and all of that jazz. And we forget that all of this drama, all of this economical game that we are playing, it's all just a means to an end. It's not going to be the end in itself. And that attachment to that game, that perpetual cycle, is something that we need to step out of, take a zoomed out view of, and hopefully, in the context of this podcast, unlearn. Because unless we do, even though our eyes are wide open, we are as good as asleep. And if you are an asleep person and you're earning 50 lakhs a year, and let's say that you start to make 80 lakhs a year the next year, you are now an asleep person who's making 80 lakhs a year. The problem wasn't that you were making 30 lakhs lesser last year. The problem was that you were asleep. And it is that problem which you need to solve, not the problem of lack of money. Now then, what are the key things that you should look out for when you are dealing with such situations, when you are trying to form an informed opinion about matters like money? I think that number one advice that I can give you is that you should not be projecting your dissatisfaction and your discontentment and your sense of lack on external things outside of yourself for that matter. Your job, your social status, your relationship, your salary, your net worth, etc., etc. Because all of those things, while they matter up to a certain point, while they fulfill you up to a certain point, they're not going to give you that sense of freedom, that sense of completeness, that sense of wholeness, because that's not what they're designed to do. That's not their job. That's not their purpose. And what happens is that because we are so used to doing things in that manner, we are so used to getting fulfilled from these external things, we start to believe that if we just do them better, if we just scale up on doing those things, they're gonna eventually, our sense of lack, our sense of incompleteness is eventually going to evaporate because of these things. But it never happens. It's not supposed to happen because these things aren't supposed to do that. And then I would also say that, just layering up from the previous point itself, that at some point in your life, after you have made enough money, more money does not really make you happier or even more satisfied than before. And this is something that I think a lot of us modern humans do know, and we realize that that is true. But when it comes to acting on these thoughts, we lack conviction and we lack the courage to actually act on them. One of my favorite actors of all time, Jim Carrey, he actually has this really beautiful quote about money where he says that I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so that they can see that that is not the answer. He said something along those lines. Of course, I paraphrased, but his actual point was exactly this. These external things that we dream and we think that they're going to make us feel fulfilled and they're going to make us realize our life's purpose and everything and all of that jazz, they're not supposed to do that. So he wishes that everyone gets rich and famous so that they realize that. But the actual point is, if you can realize before going through all of that rigmarole, before going through all of that circus, you will definitely be better off than someone who had to go through all of it and then realize what you can realize right now. Only if you were to just open your eyes and see. And then one more thing that I really feel that it's fundamental and it's something that everyone knows but still finds very difficult to act on is that we should not really be comparing ourselves, not ourselves to others, not others to others. That is a recipe for disaster, that is a recipe for discontentment and dissatisfaction, not just for in matters of money, but that is a general life principle too. Because the moment you compare one person to another, it can lead to a whole bunch of issues that you find with one person or the other. A mother-in-law who has two daughters-in-law, if she compares between them, of course she's going to find differences. Of course she's going to start liking one more than the other. And that is a recipe for bitterness. And similarly, if you are comparing what you are making with what your friend is making, even though you're doing completely different jobs, they could be in the same industry, but no two jobs are really the same. So if you begin to compare yourself with another friend of yours or another, even worse, a person whom you do not like, and you start to compare yourself with them, that is a recipe for perpetual dissatisfaction. Because here's the thing, right? We always compare ourselves with people who are doing better than us. And better in the sense of more money, because that is our benchmark for good and better and best, right? And if we just keep doing that, we forget all the good things we already have in our lives. And if that isn't a recipe for disaster, I don't know what is. You know, if you were to ask me the single biggest unlearning that I had to go through with regards to all of these topics, it would be this: understanding that external circumstances matter in your life up to a point. Before you reach that point, you cannot really honestly go within and look to resolve issues and be the best you can be and experience peace and satisfaction of, let's say, the highest degree. But therein lies the catch too. Because we are so used to pointing fingers at our external circumstances, our jobs, our salaries, our net worths, our comparisons with other people, and all of that, we keep doing that even after we have objectively nothing outside of ourselves to point fingers to. It's like that old Zen story. A monk decides one day to meditate alone and very far away from his monastery. So he picks up his boat, floats out to the middle of the sea, and closes his eyes and begins to meditate. And after it has been a few hours of completely undisrupted, unperturbed silence, he suddenly feels the blow of another boat striking against his. And with his eyes still closed, he feels so much anger rising. And when he opens his eyes, he's just ready to shout at the boatman of the other boat who, how dare he disturb his meditation. But when he opens his eyes, he sees that it was just an empty boat and it wasn't tied up, so it was just floating in the middle of the sea and it hit his boat. And at that moment, the monk understood a very important lesson. Not just that anger was within him and not outside, what he also realized was that he was being stupid when he was ready to act on that anger out of eyes that weren't even open. Open up your eyes, people. See things the way they are, not the way you think they are. Once you do that, you will be off on your path to actually do what's right. And this is also one of the key lessons of the Bhagavad Gita actually. Root yourself in yoga. Understand the intricacies of your position, of yourself in this world. And then go about whatever it is that seems to be the right thing to do. Not the other way around. Let's work on opening up those eyes, people. If not now, when? If not you, who? With this, we also come to the end of the episode. I would like to say in closing that none of this is meant to diss on being passionate about your work or being excited about making more money, improving your lifestyle, etc. The fact of the matter is that in modern times, most of the work that we humans do is not really intended to, be that thirst quenching, satisfying work that we really wish to be doing deep down. Now, one solution lies in, of course, discovering new avenues and seeking out such work. No problem with it. But not everyone gets to do that. Life gets in the way for a lot of us. So, for the vast majority of us, the solution lies not in changing what we are doing, but in changing how we are doing it, how attached we are to it, how we are perceiving it, how we are going about it on a day to day basis, how we are expecting it to change things around for us, etc. And with regards to what is the right relationship to money, I think the only answer lies in really inculcating a sense of critical thinking and discernment in our own actions. Substituting your wants for your needs, thinking about money not in terms of a means to an end but an end in itself, comparing your financial status with others and looking to always one up them. All of these and many more are common thoughts that pop into everybody's heads. You call yourself mature when you know which thoughts to act on and which ones to simply let be. And these ones that I just talked about are thoughts that are source of perpetual dissatisfaction, perpetual discontentment with life. Let them be. Well, okay then. I hope the content that you just consumed made you think deeper and inspired in you a need for critically thinking and analyzing your own opinions about the matter. In one manner of speaking, that is the wholesome aim for this entire podcast. If you think it will benefit someone in your contacts too, make sure to share it with them. If you wish to have a direct word with me personally over a chat, shoot out a DM to me at my Instagram. My handle is @nrng.chetan. Now I know a lot of you guys have already reached out to me and DM'd me about how you appreciate the show, and that means the world to me. What I would also earnestly request you to do would be to leave me a rating and a review for the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, because that is how the show will eventually reach more people. And like always, I'll see you in the playground in the next episode very soon. Until next time, peace out.